Carburetor removal and replacement on a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine. You are going to need an 8mm socket, 10mm socket, ratchet extension, inch-pound torque wrench, pliers, and 3 parts trays. We'll begin by disconnecting the spark plug wire from the spark plug. Pulling the boot off. Move the throttle lever to the stop position and move the fuel valve to the off position. First, we'll remove the 8mm screw using an 8mm socket. Rotate the filter assembly down and remove. The screen and air filter should come off as well. Place that in a parts tray. That's going to have all of our bits and pieces in it for the air filter. Next, we're going to remove the filter housing. There's 2 screws here. They're 8mm as well. Just remove those. These are always done up hand tight. If you do them any tighter, you'll strip them off. So now we got 2 screws. They go in the tray. The filter housing is hanging by the breather hose from the rocker cover. Pull that out, place it over there as well. Now we have a fuel line to disconnect. The fuel line has its retaining clip. Take a pair of needle nose pliers, blunt nose pliers, grab 3 tabs, squeeze, and slide up the hose. Grab the hose and pull and also push at the same time the bottom of the hose, and it will pop off. And just place that up and out of the way. Next, we have 2 screws to remove. There's one right here, and there's one on this side. They're 10mm. While they have a Torx head, you won't be able to get the Torx bit in that you have in your set, so you're going to have to use a 10mm socket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 10mm socket on the extension with a ratchet. And I'm going to take those 2 out. I'm going to loosen and back them out evenly. So 1, 2, 3 turns on this. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go back and forth. And the reason is, if you try and take the carburetor off without backing out them evenly, you'll end up jamming this socket right up against this fill tube, and bad things will happen. So just back them off, bring them out evenly. That way the carburetor can come off equally as well. At this point in time, I'm just going to switch to hand drive and just bring it off evenly. At this point in time, there's a heat shield behind here. Okay, it's a plastic heat shield, sometimes called a throttle body spacer. Alright, it comes off. Notice how there's a little protrusion there. That goes into the carburetor. Okay, it's there for efficiency and other reasons. There's 2 bolts. Take those bolts off, throw them in the parts tray. Take the silencer or the spacer off the parts tray, and there's a gasket on either side. There's one on this side of the heat shield plastic spacer, and there's one on the engine block. This one has been broken off, and it needs to be replaced. We'll replace it on assembly. The next step is there is the connecting arm. This goes from the governor shaft and the throttle and attaches to the throttle plate. There's two things to disconnect. There's the main shaft and a little tiny spring right there in that little tiny hole. So we have to just rotate them, pop them out. And that's the carburetor removed from the engine. At this point, I'm going to point out a few things on this carburetor. We have the choke plate. The choke plate is operated by this lever. And we have the throttle plate on this side, wide open throttle, closed, fuel goes in here. This one has no adjustments for any of the jets. They're fixed, except the only adjustment it has is on the throttle right here with this screw, which will set the low idle on this particular carburetor. So now we're going to install the carburetor. First things first, I need to clean off the old gasket. You can see it right there. Just going to use a scraper and try to clean off as much of the gasket as I can. I do not want to let the gasket go inside the engine because then it might interfere with the operation of the engine. There are better tools for this, but it's what we have. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our throttle body spacer, okay, heat shield spacer. I'm going to place a gasket on this side, and we're going to place that. And we're going to place that into the carburetor. So the protrusion part that sticks out goes into the carburetor. And then we have another gasket that we are going to place on the end. You'll notice these little ears, these little tabs. This kind of helps us locate the gaskets and where the carburetor is going to go. Okay, so I'm going to get my two bolts. I got my bolts, so I'm going to place them into, I'm going to get this thing all set up, makes it a bit easier. Okay. Now, the number one thing with assembling anything is making sure that you start all your fasteners hand tight. If you put one in there, you'll jam it. Almost forgot. We need to connect our throttle shaft and our spring back up. Okay, so again, hand tight. We don't want to cross thread anything and jam anything. If I put one in and I don't put the other one in at the same time, finger tight, get them started. Nothing will fit. It'll jam and it won't work. So I'm just very gently, I'm just using my fingertips. I'm not cranking on these at all. And just putting them in. So those are done up hand tight, no cross threading, they went in nicely, nice and smooth. Now it's time to torque them down to specification. Okay, so this is a torque wrench. Okay. They come in inch-pounds, foot-pounds. This is an inch-pound torque wrench. You can tell because it will say inch-pounds right here. A bit blurry, but this is the inch-pound torque wrench. I'm going to set it, I'm going to crank on it until the 0 lines up with 80, so we're going to tighten these up to 80 inch-pounds. So I turn the handle until it reaches 80 inch-pounds. Please see your teacher regarding any torque wrench questions and setup. The 10mm socket will not fit on the 3/8 drive of the socket. So in your toolkit, you have one of these adapters. It's 3/8 drive to 1/4 inch drive. Place that on there, place your extension, place your socket. Now how torque wrenches work is when they reach their torque, they will click. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very carefully, I'm going to hold it by the handle up top and support the extension until it clicks. Just very carefully, very slowly. You might need someone to hold your engine down for you. And there's the click. I'll click it again 2 more times just to check. There's 1. There's 2. Same thing on this side. There's 1. So verification clicks. And that's now torqued down exactly the way it should be. Okay. Let's reinstall the fuel line. Push that on there like that. Clip down. Seal it off. Now we need to put on the backing plate for the air filter assembly, and it's 2 screws. These screws, these 7mm screws, or correction, 8mm screws. I use an 8mm socket. They need to go on. I'm just going to use the socket in my fingers to let me reach in there. Again, get everything started finger tight. These are the most common screws on the engines in here that can be damaged. So don't be surprised if they're stripped or one's missing. Not a lot we can do about that. So I'm threading these in by hand. And these are just done finger tight. It says 10 inch-pounds, but 10 inch-pounds is nothing. That's 10 inch-pounds right there, just hand tight. 10 inch-pounds. Breather tube goes into the rocker cover breather hole. Last but not least, we have to put our filter together. So we have a filter here. Okay, it has up and place foam side against paper element. Okay, goes like this. The instructions say install a paper filter with the air cleaner backing plate. Note, the filter should be installed with the metal wire mesh facing the air cleaner backing plate. So that's the wire mesh facing the air cleaner backing plate, just like that. With the paper folds facing outwards, this then goes on just like this. This is just to kind of keep bugs and stuff out of there. It's a bit of a screen. Ears go down. These tabs hook down on the bottom of the air filter assembly. It pivots up, and then we have another 8mm screw to deal with. And do that up. And that is a complete carburetor removal and replacement.